Welcome back to HSC AMA. I'm your host, Julia Nijinsky, and I'm joined today by one of our coaches, one of our CRO coaches, Christian Retek. Christian Retek is the CEO and the CRO at Revenue Drivers, and I'm going to bring him in a minute. Just a second. Christian. Live TV in full bloom. Can't bring Christian here. Hello.
Hello. Just trying to set up my audio there.
Yeah, this is the most dramatic beginning of HSC AMAs. I was waiting, and yeah, awkward Zoom, awkward integrations, coffee. Christian,
There we go.
here we go. Hey, how are you doing?
Hiya. Can't complain. Can't complain. Just got off of CXO games. Before that, customer calls.
Yeah, thank you for jumping in. And actually, we have 30 minutes just to address the questions from the audience. But just to break the concept a little, I want to continue that conversation that we had on CXO games with one question. So we tend to think about, we had this conversation about sales, AI, and automation. And normally when we're talking about AI in the industry, it's always directed to sales, sales tech, GTM stack kind of became synonymous with sales. I'm curious your thoughts, Christian, if we're thinking about product in a context, not like a CTO function, but actually the classic SaaS product management role. And the case that I brought up about Airbnb and how they got rid of this role. And instead they made marketers product marketing. Basically, they reimagined what product marketing means. And they enforced talking to customers into marketing partner and also managing the product. And the mantra is that if you can't communicate the value of your product, you can't market it. So I'm curious what you're thinking about this in the context of sales. And yeah.
That was a very, very interestingly worded, difficult question to go with that way. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you're essentially asking the removal of product management being done internally versus being done externally and what kind of ramifications it can have longer term.
Yes. And just to continue the conversation that we had with Sean Shepard, that product is not a problem. And normally, like if you want your GTM to be successful, you actually need to double down on sales. You need to educate sellers to, like the human acumen, the EQ, and all the good stuff that we discussed with Robert Greene. But I kind of see the opposite problem in the market when sellers and potentially sellers that would be, taking your coaching here on the platform, they don't quite have problem with EQ, but they actually have problem and gap with knowing what they sell and how to communicate the insights that they are getting from the market back to the team, back to the management, or if you're early stage and you're a CRO. And so yeah, the question is, why do you think, or would you agree, disagree with the direction in general that GTM has to be focused on sales and sellers have to be focused on EQ as opposed to the product?
Okay, beautiful. I understand the question now. So A sale happens in a binary state in time, meaning it is a 1 or it is a 0. A sale often does not happen if your counterparty doesn't see the value. And so I saw some of the questions on the platform about like starting your own fractional CRO role, how do you scale that, et cetera. It all comes down to the same question. How do you manage customer expectations, and how do you understand that value is in the eye of the beholder? So what most people do when they come into an organization as a seller is they go through the onboarding process, they go through whatever requirements are done by their leadership. They ingest a little bit of product knowledge. Yes, they may possess the inherent influential skills or understanding of the tactics, but they're divorced from a direct line to value being in the eye of the beholder, right? So most organizations you go in, they workshop messaging. We go into organizations, we don't workshop messaging. We do interviews with the existing customers, and we make that an absolute requirement before we touch even the first outbound dial. So if the executives are not willing or agreeable to allow us to interview their executive customers and people that are actually already doing business with them, so we can suss out what the value, the product of the product, as I call it, is, because that's ultimately what you're selling. You're not selling a product. Everybody seems to think they're selling a product, so they go learn PK. You're not. You're selling the product of the product. And so if you had 1 hour with the existing customer, and you got them to speak to you in their own words, and you developed a set of questions, cough, chat GPT prompts for best questions, uncough. If you were to suss out what questions you would ask that prospect to get them to articulate to you the true value and the product of the product, you could take that talking track that customer gave you, and let's say you did this with 5 customers, and you started to see alignment in the patterns of how they're viewing the value, and it's different than the value that you've workshopped or the messaging and the marketing that you're currently using. Which one of those two do you think is going to be more effective?
It's a tough one, but it all starts with the basis, right? You know what you sell, and if we're talking about complex solutions or semi-complex, like okay, you're selling the CRM, HubSpot, Salesforce, you name it, it's really almost borderline impossible to know what the solution does in full capacity. And in this scenario, how many conversations would be enough to actually land on a right route to just work with the answers?
3. I usually find
Really?
3 to 5 existing customer conversations is the requirement in my contracts with my clients. I'll do an hour, so presumably 3 to 5 hours with the clients. And after that 3 to 5 hours, I've got my artificial intelligence assistant who has collected recordings, who has summarized everything into transcripts, has summarized into the key takeaways, like the technology we're all using in the background and that we see showing up in our meetings, right? You take that technology and you have 3 or 4 different transcripts of those conversations. You flip them into GPT and you say, here, I'm going to feed you 4 transcripts of conversations. I want you to develop to me a personality profile of the individual who would be most likely to purchase this. And you can even expand upon that. What are their problems? How are they thinking? What's their personality type? Do they fall under DISC, etc.? And at the same time, you can also suss out a potential business case in the talking track from all those that you can then use to reach out to further executives. So it's like, I don't listen to anything a customer tells me when they tell me this is what my product does. I throw it out the door immediately. Not disrespectfully, I'm being flippant with my language here, but I park it in the maybe I believe this category
Mhm.
until I hear it from the mouth of a customer. Until I hear it from the mouth of a customer. And what that may mean is, I sold a business case to a Fortune 100 company, and I'm going to target a new Fortune 100 company, and I have a hypothesis that the same business case would be valid, right? I'm going to go bottoms up in that organization, talk to the people at the bottom layer who are usually siloed away from the executive layer who make the purchases. And they, because nobody ever calls them, they're usually squealing their problems because nobody's ever asked them what their problems are. They usually ask their leadership what their problems are. And so we go to the top, that we go, instead of going top down immediately, we go bottoms up and up and up and up. And by the time we arrive at the top level, you've got enough ammunition, or you've got enough of a strong business case. You've got 5 or 6 people's talking tracks. You've got 3 to 5 existing customers And you've got essentially a unified pattern around what the product of that product looks like that they can achieve towards. And by this stage, you've probably already identified the change management problems at the bottom layer. So you have, here's the solution, here's the outcome, here's what it's going to take to get to the outcome. And for those of you that are listening to this that have read The Jolt Effect by Matthew Dixon and the Challenger guys, one of the things they mention in that book is a differentiator between top performers and average performers is that top performers, when they're trying to communicate value to their customers, they are simultaneously talking through the implementation track. So any hidden objections that that customer has in their head are now sussed out.
How do you get to that hidden objective? Because a lot of people are following obviously spin or, other frameworks, unpeel the onion or, you name it. I'm pretty sure that you're not following a script or heuristics or, name it. But what's your thinking? And if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. But when you talk to customers, they tend to lie, Christian. We all know that. Or they tend to share what they're allowed to share, right? Especially if you're going bottom up.
Mhm.
So how do you overcome that?
Bottom level, you'd be really surprised how often people are willing to squeal as long as you come in sounding like an executive. So again, hey, this is Christian Retek, Chief Revenue Officer at company ABC. Do you got a minute? That's a
Mhm.
very different talking track than, hi, this is
Yeah.
John with so and so solution. We help these and these people accomplish this and this thing. Is that useful to you? No, 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 no. Got a minute? What's this regarding? I am arranging, meaning I have not yet scheduled it. I didn't tell you this. I am arranging a meeting with some of your executives to talk about how we're going to accomplish XYZ for you folks, similar to what we did with this other enterprise company. Typically, I like to come down to the bottom level, talk to you folks, understand what your problems are so that I can get your voice in the evaluation process. Because you and I know your voice is often not in here.
Mhm.
And just that interaction alone often gets people to start saying, sure, how can I help you? And then you start saying, well, our customers that we work with typically see this in this sort of situation. What's your world look like? And so to your question of lying, it's very difficult for somebody to lie to you once you already know more about their business than they do, first of all. Second of all, as much as they are denigrated and certain thought leaders have destroyed the capabilities of these tools, the works of Chris Voss and the Black Swan Group in terms of getting people to reveal things they otherwise wouldn't reveal, stuff that's not sitting in Never Split the Difference, okay? Stuff that's sitting in the $10,000 a month coaching with Chris, these are the skills you want to collect. And for those of you that don't have $10,000 a month, fair enough. There's another book. It's called Start With No by Jim Camp. If I engage everybody in a process where the very first thing that comes out of my mouth is, look, this is what I'm trying to accomplish for you, feel free to say no at any stage if this isn't working out for you. But if I do my job correctly, you're going to see this kind of outcome, and we're going to work on that together. I am constantly in a state of permission-based engagements with folks. And I wanted to really touch on this because I know that Justin Michael and some of these folks are really, really against permission-based openers. And I appreciate where they're coming from. And it's taken me a long time to develop a hypothesis around this, around why permission-based openers work for some and don't work for others. And here's my hypothesis. My hypothesis is, if you're coming in sounding like an executive, if you're coming in with a strong sense of status and a sense of confidence in self, and you want to make something happen at that organization, you're like something they've never seen before. A lot of energy and a lot of strength that comes with that kind of approach. And so if you come in going, hey, who's responsible for this and this at your company? You're going to blow their socks off, right? So hey, how do executives often communicate with each other? Well, we do like asking permission. Hey, I know you have a really busy day, but would this be possible? And so for me personally, I find that the strength of the articulation blows people's socks off if I just do RRM without a little bit of carefulness, because you've already got so much value to bring versus routing through the call system. And so in terms of sussing out the lies, again, tough to lie to somebody who knows more about your business than you do. Tough to lie to somebody with a sense of confidence that's greater than yours is, that knows that they can serve you. But moreover, there's something in that book, Start With No, called 3+. The idea with 3+ is we're constantly in negotiations, right? And so you may ask somebody a question once, flip to a different talking track, go down that path, find something. You're going to come back to the question that you thought they lied about, and you're going to ask it again in a different way. Or you might label it, right? You go, hey, just come back to this. It sounds like this might be in conflict with the thing we just discussed. And usually what happens is if you catch somebody a third time with that sort of recursive coming back to the question in different talking tracks, so I go down this thread, I come back. I go down this thread, I come back. I go down this thread, I come back. You are overwhelmed psychologically. And so people tend to lie constantly through body language, through tone of voice, and you're on camera with them, makes it very easy to pick up in the way that they're interacting if you have a good sense of intuition. Intuition only comes when you do the reps. And so on the CXO games, one of the things I said was, if you're not here to do the reps in sales, get out. And the reason I'm so bullish about this is because I look at these questions and I see a whole bunch of people that want to succeed, that want to make good happen. And I see a whole bunch of thought leaders that are pushing processing activities. Process your leads, process your leads, process your leads, hit them as many as you can. The era of processing is over, folks. Fish are not going to just jump into your boat anymore because everybody else is doing the same thing you are. The barrier of entry for being good at sales and being good at empathy and being capable just went up because now everybody can mimic what a good salesperson looks like.
How do you scale that? In a context that obviously you can do it, obviously with experience, it's easier to do, but SDRs as a function, AEs, how do you teach that?
I initially thought it wasn't teachable. And I became somewhat despondent thinking, okay, I'm never going to be able to figure this out. It's going to be smart guy Christian doing smart guy Christian things and then trying to scale myself. What we did instead is I started taking a bit more of a different approach to the way that we were training our reps. And we focused very heavily on change management more than we did on skill drilling. Because a business development representative, they live in a simulator. They live in essentially a flight simulator. Right? Military puts their people into a flight simulator so they can learn how to fly a plane. It's a digital environment. You crash a plane in the flight simulator, you're fine. You crash a plane inside SalesLoft. You crash a plane inside your dialer. You crash a plane inside your system where you're making outbound calls. You're fine. As long as you don't have such a bad pitch that they remember you. Are we allowed or encouraged to share graphics on this? Or is it just conversational?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, let me show something. Hold on. So I've shown this to my reps quite frequently to give them a sense of confidence that you can't break anything, okay? I'm not worried about anybody breaking anything because there's this wonderful thing, I'm just trying to find the picture here, there it is, called the forgetting curve. Let me show this thing. There it is. This is the forgetting curve. And so the idea with the forgetting curve is that, listen, BD folks, if you have a bad call, if you're worried about burning a lead, etc., as long as you're a reasonable human being who just makes a mistake and you don't, insult their family, really have a memorably bad call, your phone call is going to be forgotten in about 3 days. Their comprehension of that conversation you had with them by the end of the week is gone. So this is Hormozy. You'll figure it out because you have unlimited chances to try. And so at the end of the CXO games, I was saying folks need to take more of a mastery approach to this, hit as many dials as possible, as quickly as possible, practice pitches, practice everything. Because at the same time, what your leadership should be doing is they should be feeding you business cases. They should be feeding you case studies. They should be feeding you approaches and change management examples with existing clients. And if that's not something that your leadership is doing today, you have some upward change management to do yourself. And so a lot of BDRs are like, well, I'm held to metrics. I'm just held to these particular outcomes. That's my job. What am I doing managing upwards as leadership? let's say you're not a salesperson. Let's kind of abstract this out. Your leadership is inside the general's tent and you're at war. Okay, because we are definitely in wartime right now, sales wise. It's not peacetime sales. The Aaron Ross predictable revenue approach doesn't work anymore. That was peacetime sales. We are in wartime sales where most of you have 3% connection rates, right? And so what your leadership should be doing is they should be teaching you how to build these business cases, get them through up to the organization, should be getting you high connect rates, should be explaining to you what kind of questions you can ask to get folks to discover where there's opportunities to improve things. But they should be spending less time training product knowledge. They should be spending more time value of the beholder. What's the outcome that you accomplish for the customer and the different stakeholders across that organization? Those are the things that they should be drilling, as opposed to, hey, here's the specific pitch you need to make right now. Here's the specific sentence, the script, etc. Unless they're taking a more processing-based approach, for example, like what the folks at Apex are doing, where they've got the air support team coming in, making the initial dial. And then the AE is self-sourcing off of those initial dials. So you're activating accounts, and then you're coming in with a complex business case and you're managing the account as an AE.
You're not always lucky, Christian. And the beauty of this platform, I love the idea. I love your thinking here. It's just really rare that you have the kind of leadership that you're talking about. And the beauty of this platform is folks could actually get, a one-on-one with you and probably get some coaching how to manage this up.
Yeah.
Let's just address a couple of questions that we received. I know that you've seen them, but since this is the format, what do we do? What do we do now that email has limited to 5K per day and 0.3% spam rate?
First thing you do is you take inventory of all the emails going out in your organization. First thing, that's coming on February 1st. So for those of you that don't yet know the exact number of emails, I have to plug in my laptop soon, but for those of you that don't exactly know the number of emails your organization's sending, and you're a BDR responsible for sending emails, and you know that this is coming and your leadership doesn't, this is where I'm going to introduce a term you folks may not have heard. It is your responsibility to do that. Responsibility, let's break that word down. Your ability to respond. So yes, the accountability for this email situation falls on your leadership. But reps, if you're not bringing this kind of stuff to their attention, if you're not funneling stuff back, sorry, not sorry, you are being derelict in your responsibilities. And you're creating an environment for yourself now with every decision you choose not to take. You have to surface this with leadership. And if you're not comfortable going to talk to your leadership, you're a business development representative or an AE. What's our fundamental skill set? It's going out, demonstrating value in order to get a contract or get an opportunity. That sounds an awful lot like finding a new job. So if you're even remotely okay at doing BD work, you are going to have no problem finding a new job. If you can't talk to leadership and they won't humor these conversations with you, one of two things is happening. They're not comprehending what you're saying. I mean, we can work on your talking track and we can put it together an approach through coaching with us, right? I can coach you on how to manage change with executives because that's what I do for a living. Now, or they're not listening. There is no force on this planet except failure that is going to take leadership who isn't listening from a state of not listening to listening.
I just have to be a robot just for the sake of time.
Please.
What's the best way to deploy a fractional CRO model so it actually drives ROI?
ROI for the customer, ROI for your wallet.
Good one. Let's focus on the customer.
Okay. I want you to think of it the way that you're a nuclear bomb now as a fractional representative, okay? In order for them to launch a nuclear bomb or any of its strategies, two people need to turn that key. All right, the president has the football. The defense minister has a secondary hidden football. Both of them have to turn that key. Here's how you do a fractional CRO engagement where you're not going to get fired when the executives don't support you, where you work collaboratively together. This is the most important thing, period. If you cannot learn to manage expectations as a fractional CRO, you will fail. So you have to develop a path, almost a roadmap that is completely closed loop with your executives. What does closed loop mean? If there's even so much as an opportunity that you don't know where the football is during your fractional CRO or fractional engagement with your clients, if you don't know what's going on in any way, shape, or form, you have failed. And that will come back to bite you, and they will hold you responsible for that failure because you were the one responsible for developing a system to catch those problems. So, first 3-4 clients I had, yep, learned about some new problems that got me in trouble. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th client are going, yes, sir, what do you need? These ones are paying invoices immediately before I start. These ones are going through the implementation document with me and saying, we made you a shared drive with every single thing you asked for. But the fact of the matter is, in order for you to stand up a successful fractional engagement where you're working with an executive team, they have to see you as a peer. They have to see you as a subject matter expert, and they have to trust that what you're doing is effective. Now, remember, these people have built their organizations. They've seen a lot of the problems that are going on. So they need somebody who can see the problems that are coming that they can't see. And you need to show them an approach that says you have clarity around what all the open loops could be. So I'll give you an example. Invoicing. This is a simple one that I think a lot of people will appreciate. Most people take invoicing in arrears, right? 2 weeks after. We don't start work unless we're paid first. And that's actually on my implementation guideline. And I've flat out told customers, I'm really excited that you want to start. We can start when the payment is deposited. Oh, but we wanted to move really, really quickly. Yep. It sounds like if you folks move really quickly, you have unilateral ability to get that agreement signed and that invoice processed quickly. Here's a credit card form. So what you need to do is basically like the same thing you do with anything, like excuse destruction is what this comes down to. The open loop is, we typically pay in arrears. There's an existing policy. No problem, Mr. C-suite. I'm willing to hold off my work until we get that payment. No, but I want you to start now. I understand you want me to start now. Typically, we don't start until we get this because we need to resource this. I'm not doing anything special with the words that I'm using, but if you look at my face and you feel my energy, it's a very respectful no. But I'm not saying no for me. I'm saying no for them, because if I can't get them accountable to my implementation process, there's no way we're going to hit ROI.
Do you have an internal filter, Christian? Or what clients to work with, what clients to better skip? And I mean, obviously in an economic environment like we're in, the beauty and the ugly of the human nature kind of shows up. So curious to just hear your thinking. How are you filtering the people to work with? And I know that people will hate me for this question because everybody needs customers now, but still.
If people hate you for that question, they are penny wise and pound foolish, and they should hang up their stirrups, because it's a very important question. As the fractional environment starts to pick up, as more and more people look to start their agencies, it's going to become tremendously competitive. And so how are you going to filter to make sure that you don't have a bad fit customer? And for those people that are upset with you, you know what's worse than not getting any customers? Having pissed off customers. You know what? It's funny. One of my first customers actually gave me an ulcer. Gave me a full ulcer. I was so stressed. I was working 16-hour days constantly for like a year straight. Actually ended up in the hospital. They had to shock me, kill me, and re-shock me to restart my heart. That's how stressed out I was. So, folks that are listening to this, you don't need to go through that. Here's how you filter. Number one, have they failed? Number one, have they failed? If they are not failing, they are not a good fit. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to become an employee with a corporate bank account. If you take on somebody who's brand new, right? All these new entering companies, pre-rev, etc. In today's economic climate, what I've noticed with my pre-rev clients is that I get a yes from the CEO and I get agreement from a CEO on what to do. And then an investor comes in and sidebars and tells me what to do. And then I have to go to the investor and say, I think we're misunderstanding this relationship a little bit. I'm here to serve you. If you're going to tell me to do things this way, then we can dial back the implementation document and we may not be a good fit for each other. But you have to have the confidence to say, look, these are the people that I serve. The people that I serve behave like this, they do this, they accomplish this. And now you have an option, Mr. Chief Executive. You can either qualify yourself to me as one of those people who wants my service, or I'm happy to introduce you to somebody else you can employ. It's all about qualification. They have to have failed at least twice. Once or twice is ideal. And I'm cherry picking our solution specifically, so that gives me a little bit of power. And this can also give you folks some power. Let me give you an example. I do not sell anything that is under $100,000 in ACV. It could be $99,900. I won't sell it unless they, sweeten the deal. By virtue of that cutoff right there, I've said I do not take people under this list. You know what the universe does to people? It throws you a bunch of people under that list to see if you're full of shit or not. And then you have to trust in yourself. And you have to bet on yourself that the next client you get is going to be the right one. And so we're back to sales again. This is selection criteria. You've got to find people who have failed, who are humble enough to let you run their organization. If they're not humble enough to let an outside entity touch it and they want you inside, walk away. Walk away. This will be a headache. But somebody who understands the value of an outsourced agency, and for those of you that are trying to do this, there's something called an employment premium. I'm giving you like a beautiful hack here. There's something called an employment premium, vacation, benefits, perks, insurance. When a CFO salaries you for $100,000, the number that's going inside the spreadsheet of the org is $130K. So if I can save you the employment premium by being a fractional CRO and still get you the same output, that has inherent value in this economic time. And you just drive up the commissions. Anytime something closes or you make a revenue share agreement.
It's certainly useful. Christian, what's your thinking about these two opposite trends when like we're in a recession and I'm seeing a lot of people becoming really desperate, especially on the fractional side of things. And the other half seems to be fine. And maybe it's the other extreme when they're in fact doing so fine that it irritates, those that are striving to be there. But in your opinion, what separates them?
Your audience is going to hate this answer. Belief. So again, I'm a bit of an esoteric guy. You're not going to hear a lot of strategies and tactics from me unless you ask for them. I want to change people's inner game, because if I can tweak your inner game, the outer game follows instantly. You just like if I can tweak your inner game properly, then your outer game becomes an expression of yourself. There is no tactic in the world that will work better than you being authentic to yourself, right? And so these folks that are in a state of desperation or they're concerned, there's one of two things going on. One, you got some inner game work to do with your confidence. And I've been here. I've had the one client problem. I've had the one client transitioning and being exited to 0 clients problem right after that. And we sprinted and pulled another 500K out because we were terrified of possibly going to 0. And I think momentum's a really big part of it. The people that are successful, they're out there doing it. They're out there having the conversations, even if nothing's happening. They understand that to some extent, sales is a numbers game. It's a contact sport. You have to do contacting in order to get clients. Now, back to belief. This is my belief. You do not have to agree with me. I believe we are living in a really interesting computer game. A really interesting computer game where the frequency that we give out by virtue of our thoughts tends to attract the reality that we want to put out. And so if I'm sitting here going, oh God, I don't know when my next paycheck is coming. Oh God, I don't know when my next paycheck is coming. What frequency am I putting out there? What is the universe going to return to me? Self-fulfilling prophecy. But if I wake up every day with a sense of belief that I'm going towards something bigger than myself and I can truly serve the people that are interacting with me, this part's super important. If I believe that I can serve you, and I know this because I've done the activities for people and I know what it takes to get there, I know that there's no amount of work that I'm going to run away from. There's nobody I can't serve except people who don't fall into my box, people who are not humble, people who have not failed before, people who don't sell at least $100,000 inside digital transformation that are complementary solutions. So I've basically said to the universe, this is what I'm going after. Boxed it. And every morning, this is an exercise I recommend all people listening to this do because it will change your life. What you're going to do is you're going to write a letter to yourself as though it's you a year from now. So Christian a year from now has written a letter to Christian today that says, hey, dude, you've joined one of the biggest agencies in the world. You've got incredibly happy clients. You've got a villa in Croatia. This. I got extreme clarity around what that looks like. Oh, and so far, that is coming true. Okay, I did just join one of the biggest agencies, and it was an accident that it happened, pure serendipity, but I wrote it on that letter before it actually happened. And so I look at that letter every single day because there are going to be times where I deal with a shitty client. There are going to be times where I deal with difficulty. There were months, like there were 4 months where our revenue was zero. I keep calm and continued on.
How do you not get emotional with clients, Christian?
You can see I'm a fiery individual. I do get emotional with clients, but I've learned how to mask my deep inner disturbance. So I have a coach. I would not be anywhere near where I am today without my coach because usually my coaching calls turn into therapy sessions. Right? So you need a therapist, especially in sales where you're dealing with personalities that are stronger than yours, probably for the first little bit, especially if you're new to this fractional space. You may not have had your first client and you need some help, but do not see emotion as a bad thing. It is a fundamental driver of human behavior. And also the emotions you have, this deserves its own conversation, but the emotions, the negative ones you see happening to you, they are your dark side. That is your shadow work. So for example, you see somebody on LinkedIn who's posting something that pisses you off. There's something in there that you need to go look at with your therapist in the shadow work. Your client pisses you off because they're not doing something. You need to go do some shadow work. And if you want to undo all of this, but give yourself a really big headache for the first couple of months, like you want to fix your emotional issue right away, I can give you all an immediate fix for your emotional issue and you're going to hate it. Every single thing that happens to you is your fault. Every single thing. And now when you take responsibility for something, you have a mission. Missions tend to overwhelm emotions. I don't trust emotions. I'll feel them. I will allow them to be felt. But I know in myself, I'm very quick to anger. I'm very quick to, response, react, etc. So how do I solve this? I go exactly in the opposite direction.
I want to be respectful of your time because I know that we're going over the committed time. Do you have a hard stop?
No? Just let me
Beautiful.
plug in my laptop.
Let's do that.
It has a hard stop.
The question that I have, and I'm seeing a lot, it's another paradox. A lot of people, specifically in a recession, start to procrastinate. And I'm
Yep.
seeing it a lot in, we can talk about Gen Z SDRs, we can talk about, very excellent CROs, creatives, all over the place. What's your recipe as a business owner?
To overcome procrastination?
Yeah.
Everybody read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. You will get a 3-month motivational boost immediately once you learn of this phantom entity in your existence called resistance. That book will blow your mind because every single religious book has a unifying thread around it called evil. Evil is resistance. If you imagine this video game as a constant, if you imagine that you live in a video game where you are constantly having your attention pulled from you by things that are meant to take you off whatever course you were put on at the start of this engagement called life, you start fighting against the distractions. Second thing, dopamine. Let's talk about this chemical real quick, because every single one of us has basically become a slave to this chemical pathway in one way or another. And a lot of us are on stimulants because of ADHD. Like, this is a very weird world we live in right now. First things first, turn off your notifications. Second thing, time block. The more you practice the muscle of concentration, the more it will work. Unfortunately, we've all been put on this roller coaster by the value chain and the powers that be, where our attention has inherent value, a lot of inherent value. So the way you overcome this is you realize you're a hamster on a wheel right now, every time you're distracted. I have a question for everybody in the audience. Are you okay with being a hamster on the wheel right now? Does that make you feel powerful? Does that make you feel good? Does that make you feel a sense of empowerment about what you're capable of doing as an individual? No. So every time you see resistance or procrastination start to show up, first things first, label it appropriately. This is a problem. This is something that is not going to serve me. This is something that is not going to serve my family. Again, that letter that I write, the first time I wrote it, my coach got me to write out that letter. First couple of months, I was like, what? Why are you making me read this thing every day? I don't get it. Now I read that thing every day after a year of writing, of having written it. And, it changes when you hit the goals, right? And now it's become a solemn commitment to myself and my family that whatever is on that letter becomes the primary thing. So how do you kill distraction? With planning. You kill distraction by planning your day the day before. I live and die by my calendar. My calendar says this is the activity I'm doing. That's the activity that I'm doing. Do that for yourself. Develop that sense of discipline, because I think what they didn't tell us in school, and like our parents never told us, is that the more that we say we're going to do something, the more that we empower our voice, the more we feel a sense of integrity and responsibility within that we can actually accomplish anything. The way you slay resistance and procrastination is by knowing what it is, labeling it, and knowing that you can get through it by doing it a couple of times. Start with something small. Take your phone. If you got one of these, swipe down, hit this little focus button right here, and it says do not disturb. And now watch this. Put it down and don't pick it up until you're done your time block. I know it sounds novel to some of the people watching this, but if you understand there's a war happening with major corporations right now that want your attention, and they're winning, and the consequence of them winning is you not being able to feed your family, yes, it's intense. Yes, it's a little bit aggressive. Does it make it any less true?
How do you manage that from the management perspective?
As a leader?
Yeah, as a leader and avoiding cancellation.
You can't really avoid cancellations per se. I'll say this. I don't remember the last time I had a cancellation. I had a no-show, followed up with somebody calling me immediately and saying, hey, I'm so sorry, did something else happen? Here's how you avoid that. When you become process-oriented, when you start to think ahead of your prospects and you say, look, all my prospects go through juncture A, B, C, D, and E before they hit success with me. Mr. Prospect, are you willing to go through that process to make sure that we can determine whether or not this is the right fit for you? You make the agreement up front.
It's an interesting spin on it. I'm more curious to learn, how do you manage your team when you are seeing procrastination in the team?
I've had 3 different experiences here. I could bucket them into 3 different frameworks. Experience number 1, procrastinating, wishes they weren't. Coaching. I will go down to the rep level, sit beside them, and spend a whole day cold calling if that's what it takes. I actually enjoy this. If it's somebody who has the sense of vulnerability on my team, who's like, look, man, I'm really struggling with distractions right now. I cannot figure this out. No problem, man. I'm the first person to come grab my gun, get behind you and help you get to your goal and show you what it takes to beat resistance. Now, what am I doing here? By me sitting down there with you and spending a workday with you, right beside you, you know what ends up happening? You see my workflow. You feel my energy. You ask me questions. And what happens when you see me succeeding? Well, it's not a direct reference experience that you can claim for your confidence, but it'll be better than the day you had yesterday. And now you have a little bit of a reference experience starting. So we may have to, go sit with our reps, pull the ripcord on the lawnmower, get them kind of moving. Case number 2, I'm procrastinating and I'm not telling you. I'm going to ask you, because my process, if you breathe in my process, I can smell something out of the wrong, direction. This is why it's so important to develop clear closed loop processes, because the moment somebody touches one of your electric gates, they get zapped. So I have had representatives who procrastinate and they don't tell me. I will let this happen for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. If you procrastinate and you don't tell me, I'll talk to you on week 3. If by week 4 you haven't transformed magically into the humble, I suck at procrastinating, please help me guy, you transform into the unemployment line. I'm not kind about this. There's a reason I'm not kind about this, because if my reps are procrastinating and I can't fix it, I'm not the right leader for you. I can't help you. All I'm going to do is be a derelict leader now, make everybody below you suffer because you're not bringing in any revenue. And then there's a third bucket, procrastinating it and fixing it. I leave them alone unless they ask, because that sense of empowerment they get when again, I give them The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. They read it. There's a massive, what do you call it? Like a spotlight now on procrastination, resistance, the ego. You have an understanding inside you. Your heart now knows what you have to do. I think, this is just my hypothesis, I think almost everybody knows what they have to do all the time in life. Like your heart will tell you and will guide you. But what people do is they let the distractions distance them from their heart. And so they're asking, well, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I overcome this distraction? It's like, dude, I think you kind of know the answer to this. I think everybody knows the answer when it's like, how do I make 100 cold calls in a sitting? Well, you put on the headset, you load the list, you block the time, and you press the button, and you don't stop until you're done. And through going into that discomfort, you come out stronger. Like, we all know what we have to do, but for whatever reason, some phantom force is keeping us from being our best selves. So I believe it's my responsibility as leadership that if that phantom force is in your life, I'll ask you questions and I'll do my very best to get that out of there.
Beautiful. We're approaching the 2 most difficult months for sales for the majority of the industry, December, January. What's your advice, Christian? I know that's pretty generic, but still.
I don't know everyone's sales cycle lengths, but for those of you that can still realistically and feasibly close those deals in these last 2 months, this is what you should do right now. Get a list of those 10 people, 15 people that are in your pipe, whatever. Look, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Give them the accusation audit. I know you get a lot of these calls around 2 months out, 3 months out before the quarter of the year, etc. I have a favor to ask. What can I do today to help you folks come to an agreement before the end of the year? Is that even possible? Is that even in the realm of reality right now? Do not show up and say it's renewal time. Do not pull the large data provider company renewal playbook. Do not. It's disrespectful as hell. Come in, see if there's anything you can do to help. Ask them point blank, is that even feasible? Is that value something you folks want to hit the first, couple months of the year running with? That's probably your best effort. Some of you can go into procurement and say, hey, I know you might have policies where if I ask you to pay in full, there's a 10 to 15% concession that you can offer, and you can leverage that to potentially get that moving. But the way that we run our sales processes, we don't often get into these situations, and it's largely because, hey, folks, this is the path I typically take with people. Do you want to get into this path? Yes or no? If yes, here's the mutual action plan. Please help me correspond these dates appropriately. And the very last date on the mutual action plan with the prospect is kickoff. So, Mr. Customer, we're going to track towards kickoff before 2024 starts. Is that still realistic and feasible for you? Yes, it is. Okay, what needs to happen still before we get that done? I see that the following things in the mutual action plan aren't done yet. So, again, planning is the crux of everything. Knowing what your revenue generating activity for the day is the crux of everything. And being able to hold people accountable to a particular plan is your saving grace. Now, if you can't do that, you can try to throw concessions at the wall, like I'd mentioned. That might work. Just ask. Just ask. Set expectations appropriately, and do not be the guy that goes to leadership a week and a half before the end of the quarter and says, my stuff's not going to close. Don't be surprised if you get fired. You could at least say something, set expectations, manage expectations with leadership, etc.
Tremendously valuable. Thank you so much, Christian. We are reaching the top of the hour. And the last question is always, what clients are you most excited to work with?
If your answer to why you're here is I want to make 10,000 calls, be the best possible salesperson I can be, make $1 million, and I'll do whatever it takes to get there, regardless of the work that it takes. Those are the people that we want to talk to. Those are the people that are going to get the 50, 60% success rates that most other people want. The ones who are like, no, my excuses are just examples of resistance. People who are like, I don't care how you talk to me. I care about the value that's coming out of the words. I care about the heart that's behind the person. And I care that you want me to see success. So basically, folks, if you want to be under the wing, you want to make $1 million in the next 1 to 2 years selling high ticket solutions. You want to move from small, medium business upmarket into enterprise. You don't know the first thing about an enterprise sale. Preferably that you don't know the first thing, because then I don't have a whole bunch of bad attitudes and ideas to unwind. I would love to help you. That is a sweet spot. If you're leadership and you're struggling, you've got a set of reps and maybe you're not feeling confident enough to, maybe you're not feeling confident enough to will something into existence and you're at your last legs and you're like, I cannot figure this out. I have strategies for you. I have strategies and tactics that you can employ that will get your reps accountable. I also have a mental playbook so that you can deal with the blowback of the instantaneous change that they're going to be giving you when you make those changes.
Full package. Thank you so much, Christian. Everybody, we're going to be posting Christian's marketplace listing in probably 5 minutes from now. So follow the link on LinkedIn and hit the coaching button before it's too late. Christian.
Can I say one thing? For the first 10 people that register, no one else, I've been talking about a secret channel that has a greater than 50% connect rate. I will show you what that secret channel is. I will show you how to use it. And I will tell you that I have closed 400K worth of enterprise deals this year using that channel. And I have opened several million on that channel. And most of you have access to it right now on your phone and you don't know what it is.
So, see you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you so much.